If you're a front-end engineer afraid of AI, there are 3 core front-end skills that you want to focus on for you to become AI-proof. Let's dive straight into them.
Yeah, so the number one skill you want to invest in right now as a front-end engineer, it's system design. And I'm talking about front-end system design. You don't need to go into database sharding and load balancers, but focus on the front. And the thing with front-end system design is that if you use an AI agent to write code, it will give you a very beautiful UI. But most of those models, including the latest Opus models, they've been heavily optimized from prompt to UI. So they will ignore everything else. And your front end will look more or less like this, where you have different entities, not very well defined, interacting with each other. And at the end, it kind of works and there's apparently no bugs, but it will be extremely expensive and hard to maintain and to extend. But a great front-end application looks more like this, where we have clear boundaries, we have different services with different responsibilities, we hide a lot of the implementation details to the outside world, and they present clear interfaces, and the other entities, they program to interfaces. They use only those interfaces to be extended. You have clear boundaries, and that also makes it easier to use AI agents to extend the code, because in terms of context engineering, you'll use a lot less tokens to add the same value. But in order for you to be able to set this kind of architecture, to be able to divide your code base in modules and really implement an architecture, you need to be great at front-end architecture and system design. And I will not dive deep into it in this video because it's definitely out of our scope, but make sure you check out this video on our channel where I do exactly that. Now, going back to our original front-end system design, the second problem with coding with LLMs is that every time you implement a new feature, you will overfit your architecture to that feature. So basically, instead of having a stable architecture, you'll change things too much because those models are made to give you great visual results. They are made to show you how much they can do with a single prompt, but they will do so at the expense of everything you've done before. And so good architecture never overfits to a specific feature. You never turn everything around to point to that single goal. Usually what you do is you compromise, and your final front-end architecture looks like the line in between. It's a combination of all these different features, and it's a common ground. That's a lot easier to extend, it's a lot more stable, and it's a lot easier to explain. And so you need to make sure when you code with AI that you avoid these code smells and that you're able to set the right guardrails that are able to debug and review AI code. If not, you'll end up with a bunch of spaghetti that, yes, looks good for the users, but it's impossible to extend, it's slow, and it's very hard to maintain. So we saw how front-end system design is one of the main skills you want to focus on. But now let's talk about another skill, and this one is design to code. Basically getting from that UX, UI deliverable that your designer gave you to an HTML or a working component. This skill is the one that was affected the most by AI. You will have to only pretty much review AI input, but AI models right now are very big and they have all this context and they're pretty good at this kind of constrained problem. Now we will see in a second that when it comes to code quality, it's a whole different story. But when it comes to design to code, which was 80% of what we used to do in the front end, it kind of disappeared. And this is why a lot of front-end engineers are afraid that front-end disappeared. But the reality is front-end didn't disappear, it will just change massively. And if you position yourself well, you'll have a head start in this new world.
If I understood correctly, it's kind of the mechanical part of front-end engineering that's going away. And I remember a lot of developers in the development teams I worked in where the only thing they were doing is kind of get some work from the designer and paste a button here and there, change some styles. And I feel like that kind of work, it's completely done. If your job is doing that, or it was only doing that, you are going to have a little to show for it, and you're competing with LLMs head to head almost.
Exactly. So maybe you used to have 5 people doing that, and now you're going to have one person, and that person will use an AI coding agent and they'll have a design system so they can scale themselves. So yes, there will be one person that has to go very deep and do that on a daily basis, but it's not going to be the backbone of front-end development anymore as it used to be. Moving on to web performance. So this is one of those topics where people say, well, making a performant website, it's a different story and AI cannot do that. I've been working with the latest models for the last year, and trust me, whenever it comes to one of those problems where they have a clear objective, get the core web vitals under this mark, they're pretty good. And a lot of people were saying, well, but they take shortcuts, but it turns out they got a bit better, they prompt you on architecture decisions. So whenever you have a clear way, like you have a very well-defined criteria of success, LLMs are pretty good. So I'm going to put this web performance. It's grayed out also. It's important that you know web performance. You want to go deep into how the browser works, critical rendering path, and all the web engineering, but it's not going to be a differentiator anymore.
What I want to understand, Bogdan, is the reason why knowing web performance, and is it still worthy to know web performance? But I think thinking about it now, I think it goes back to the system design side of things, where the knowledge you have about web performance will help you understand, is this a design problem or is it an optimization problem? So I can point my AI agents toward, I don't know, do a lighthouse analysis, look at the core web vitals and optimize on that, right? Which is something that, as you said, LLMs can do pretty well. Or because I know about web performance, I can understand whether it's a system design problem or not. But the knowledge itself, it's building into your system design knowledge, is not the core differentiator anymore, right?
Yeah, the thing with web performance is that you have to spend 5% of the time diagnosing the problem and 90% of the time implementing the solution, which tends to be pretty tedious. Going to your code base, resize your images, and kind of refactor some components, maybe memorize them. And you can do that with a single prompt once you have the direction. So you do need to get good at it, as you mentioned, at a system design kind of look and feel, but you're not going to have to do this on a daily basis going in and so on. Moving on to automated testing, so basically writing tests. I think this was one of the biggest things that got automated. And so I'm going to put this in gray because as long as you know what you're doing and you know the test coverage you want to have and a bit about the testing pyramid, you will be much, much faster. You finally have software that is covered by tests. And I can tell you everything that I built these days has a much higher test coverage than they used to have. And you just give you kind of the specifications for those tests and it's pretty amazing there. So that's one of those things where I'm very happy that we have large language models in AI coding.
But what about the argument where people are saying, hey, AI is writing useless tests or is writing tests that are not writing anything or tests that are very obviously stupid, right? What would you say again?
Say yes, but still you only have to review the test. You only have to review what it's testing for. And a lot of the heavy work, creating the mock data, mounting components, that was very tedious. You have to write it. People would copy paste it all the time. And a lot of that you can do with large language models. And so the surface of how much you need to do to have your code coverage, it's a lot smaller now. And you basically scale that with an LLM, versus back in the day, it should be like, I want to test this, I know how to mark it. Give me 10 days, I'll come back to you when I finish. Now it's like, give me a couple hours.
Yeah, and let's be honest, we weren't doing a lot of automated testing. People were saying, we're interviewing you for it in a technical interview, but we weren't doing much of it because there was never enough time. And I feel like there's some part of hate towards AI and LLMs in coding that's not justified, right? Because they are pretty good at those repetitive tasks and they give us more space or they help us do a bit more in that context.
Exactly. Moving on to code quality. This is one of the biggest thing that LLMs don't do well unless you specify it. And so just to give you a few examples from code I've been writing with the latest model, that's basically I use a Fable from Anthropic as the latest and most powerful model. It's not even sustainable from a cost perspective. And this is an example of a component extracted from our code base. And there's two big problems, and these problems are general when it comes to front-end code written by AI agents. The number one is this number one code smell, which is hard-coded non-relative CSS values. So what these models do a lot is you go in and you tell it, hey, here's a screenshot, can you build this UI? And it's going to try to use your design system or whatever, like in this case, I'm using Tailwind, but then all of a sudden, because it has to satisfy whatever you gave it in, it's going to use hard-coded values. Here it used text 28 pixels. The problem with that is that number one, it's not responsive. It's going to be very hard to make that thing responsive. We usually have to use relative sizes, like our RAM, that will adapt on all devices. And number two is that it's not cohesive with the rest of your application. The reason why we have things like text to XL or 3XL, we have these predefined atomic classes in CSS is to show some consistency to the user. And going back to user interaction and so on, the reason why you want consistency is that when users see a consistent UI, their brain works less. There's less cognitive load if things don't change all the time. And the only things you need to focus on, they change. So that's number one, code smell. And again, this comes from the first thing I mentioned, which is they're built to hyper optimized over the target you gave them. So they're going to go in and kind of go for that goal. And the second one is nested components. And so this is the one they do a lot. We see this text component is basically created every time you re-render the function Spotlight. Normally, you want to take this out. You could use memorization. You could take it in another file and have some unit tests on it if they're needed. But they just declare it inline. And the problem with this text being declared inline is that it's also not reusable. So you end up with a lot of code application. Every time you need to solve a small problem, it will solve it locally. And a lot of you might say, well, why don't you tell the AI to look at the whole code base if that functionality is already implemented there and then come back and implement it? Well, that takes a lot of context. And you go into the dump zone and context root, and then you get worse results. Or you spend a lot of tokens. And then you get into the front-end engineering aspect, which is, okay, what if we put our reusable functionality in libraries that are shared between modules? And then you talk about modules, and then you need a front-end engineer. So if you're scared about AI taking your job as a front-end engineer, you need to do two things right now, right? We spoke about system design, but then going very low level and going very granular and being able to inspect what is the code base made of.
And Bogdan, just to jump in here, if you do that, you will also be able to pass interviews. So because a lot of developers I talk to, they tell me, yeah, I've been told I don't sound or I'm not senior, I don't come across as a senior enough. And if you're able to have this high-level system design view, but at the the same time go very deep into the details of the browser, of React or whatever framework you're working with, of JavaScript itself, then you're going to nail those interviews. Not only you're going to be more productive with AI, but you will also be able to not worry about the job market as much as other software engineers are doing right now, right?
Exactly. So you want to really go into the extremes. It's not going to be a lot of repetitive front-end work to do, but there will be a lot of front-end work to do. And finally, this is what happens when you vibe code or you work with AI and you write a lot of code without checking the components. This is a summary of one of our systems, pretty big. And as you see here, we see there's a 9% application in our code base. And this is static analysis. This means that those snippets, they look exactly the same. I'm not even talking about functions that have 90% shared functionality. No, this is exactly what they do. They do the same thing. And there's 153 unused files. And that's extremely bad for your context management. It's extremely bad for the results you get from AI. So as you let agents work unsupervised and you don't take a look at the code or the code quality and you don't optimize for that, you might have an app that looks like you want it. You're basically sitting on a pile of technical debt. The moment you want to move a little piece, it will all come down together. Now let's talk about accessibility, which looks like it stays in, but it's one of those things that, again, it's pretty well defined and you can instruct your agents to use semantic HTML. And whenever you have something more complex, you have to go into it. But you can also use AI to help you make things more accessible. And it's, again, one of those granular component work level, which was, for the most part, also can be automated with AI. And again, it's a non-functional requirement, so it's not core to the business value. So business will push you to just get it done and move on to the next thing. So when it comes to accessibility, you can instruct your agent to use, number one, semantic HTML. Whenever you're using an element that cannot be used in a semantic way, like you kind of need to take a shortcut or use a lot of divs, then use area labels to signal their role. And also make sure that the order of the elements in the tab index matches the order of the elements on the screen. And that's, for the most part, you can do that with an agent and go really fast. And back in the days, we used to have an accessibility sprint where you spend 2 weeks just doing accessibility. Right now, the person that's building the platform, the person that's building the design system for the whole company can make sure that's already accessible. And then AI can learn from that and you use it and you don't need to care about. You're just going to do a soft check. And finally, the last skill, which is state and data. And this is one of the most important low-level skills when you're building components, is basically being able to look at an UI and then what is the best data structure to model that UI, to kind of collapse that into its essential state. We talk a lot about essential state in this channel. There's a lot of videos about it. Make sure you check those out. But basically, if you use AI, you'll have kind of local state all over the place. And a lot of it will be redundant because people are building components in isolation. And unless you communicate and you know about architecture, you'll end up fetching the same thing from the back end to render it in 2 different places. So you end up having 2 requests. And in a design application, state is much more ordered, and it's what we call the essential state. You don't want to have any redundant state. You don't want to have derived state. State should be as minimal as possible. And I like to use this metaphor of the Picasso ball. So Picasso starts drawing a ball with all the detail, and then he starts collapsing it into the minimum representation, which would be this one. So basically, you use the spaghetti agentic coding UI will have a lot of state, will be very heavy, but if you do it well, you'll condense that into this, which is the main abstraction of a ball. And you want to apply for that the single record principle, which means that every piece of data must be stored exactly once in a system. And if you worked on vibe coding application, an application that gets really big, even with AI, this is a task that takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of context, it takes a lot of engineering work to make it happen. And so it's a lot better if you, as a front-end engineer, when working with AI, you already know these principles and you can apply them at a high level.
A few questions before we wrap it up. Number one, if I'm a front-end engineer, when I have all the skills in mind and I know now that, hey, I need to get better at system design, I need to get better at code quality, and I need to get better at state, which one should I pick first?
It very much depends on the system you're working on. I advise everyone to learn as much as they can from production. If you are working on a system that has micro frontends, that has a bit of scale, you definitely want to invest in system design. But I know a lot of people are working on features. You maybe don't own such a big place or part of the system. So that's where I go very granular and focus on state and data and code quality, which is you go in and whenever you're doing something with an agent, you take a look at that pull request and you start really doing a code review. Not an AI code review, but you really look at the code that comes out of the machine, because that's the only way. It's like you have this industrial factory that's making cakes, and the only way for you to know if it's good, gotta go in and taste it.
And by the way, folks, if what you want is to become an AI-proof front-end engineer and senior engineer and full-stack engineer, then the first step is for you to know what you're lacking. And to do that, Bogdan and I put together this free technical assessment for JavaScript engineers, where just you're gonna invest 10 minutes, answer a bunch of questions, and it will show you roughly your gaps to get to that senior level. And if you want to learn more about these 3 major skills that will dictate the future of the front-end: system design, code quality, state and data, there is a lot of content here on the channel, on the Senior Dev channel. And if you want Bogdan and I to dive deep in any of those skills, just let us know in the comments. Even if we don't always answer, we always read them and we will add it to the list. Thank you, Bogdan, and we will see you folks in the next one.